I serve as executive director of an organization called the Federation of Indian American Christians of North America, so we're including Canada. This is an international organization focused on religious persecution of Christians in India, as well as other religious minorities. So working closely with our Muslim siblings, Sikh siblings, advocating on behalf and alongside Dalits, who are the lowest castes in India, and then indigenous women and men who are usually farmers in northern India and eastern part, the Advaisis, who are some of the oldest indigenous peoples in the world, frankly, who still run the land. The organization is focusing on persecution, religious persecution or ethno-national repression. And so the rise of very briefly, the rise of Hindutva or Hindu nationalism is very similar to what we see in terms of Christian nationalism in the US, except imagine it on steroids, that it's already been legitimated in 3 branches of government. The judiciary, with the Constitution, changes that are proposed in the Constitution, and also the application of law at the state level and federal level, basically making it illegal to be a Christian. I'm going to turn it to Peter to talk very specifically about what that means, and to be a religious minority. The second is, so the judiciary, the legislature, which is taking away land ownership, opportunities for education, funding from religious organizations, Christian organizations, everything from Mother Teresa's Sisters of Charity, which is illegal now in India, to Compassion International, which is a more evangelical organization, to Amnesty International, which has been illegal for about 3 years. So it's a broad spectrum that we're talking about, where we as people of faith, United Methodist, support all of these kinds of essential ministries. So it's happening at every level. I'm going to invite Peter to just give a little, what does this really look like? And Peter is a journalist. He's coming from the Orthodox Church, our sister church. So we celebrate ecumenism today. Peter, very briefly.
So Hindutva, this religious nationalist ideology, has taken over India for the past decade. And here at the UMC General Conference, with the Philippines resolution, there's also another resolution that's gone to consent calendar, which is on the issue of persecution of Christians in India, condemning it and denouncing Hindutva as an ideology, this religious nationalist ideology. Hindutva, what it wants to do, it's articulated, it wants to subjugate all religious minorities and promote this homogenized idea, twisted idea of Hinduism, which is against the peaceful view, which it's typically followed. And then it specifically wants to target Christians and Muslims basically for elimination, for extermination from the country. And it's been doing that over the past year, just last year.
Yeah.
There were multiple attacks.
400 churches were either burnt or bulldozed in the eastern part of India.
Hundreds of people killed.
United Christian Forum, which is an ecumenical organization, my good friend Jean Dayal, who's a lay Catholic activist, had 3,000 signatures and documented this, over 2,000 incidents of whether it's pulling people out of churches, extrajudicial arrests of clergy, laity.
Giant mobs attacking Sunday services, 500 people armed with the police accompanying them, invading the service, shutting it down, turning the congregants and the clergy over to the police. Christians, Muslims being gang raped, burned alive, dismembered, that sort of thing, in partnership with police, with state complicity. And what was being said about the Philippines is so true in terms of parallels, those same tactics. Enforced disappearances and extrajudicial executions, the weaponization of anti-terror laws to go after human rights defenders, academics, activists, people who work with the tribals, the poorest of the poor, people who are being thrown behind bars, held for months or years with no charges, anyone that offers dissent or is a critic of the government.
So the resolution is calling for 3 things. Number 1, to designate and actually appreciate that the legislation that was set on the Philippines was lifted up. There's another piece of legislation that Senator Coons has sponsored. It's a bipartisan piece that makes every piece of foreign policy, it's amenable to really human rights. So it's not a question of security or human rights, it prioritizes human rights. And we've been meeting with members of Congress for the past month, and there's strong support for that. But the resolution that we will pass, God willing, was passed in committee unanimously, will ask for three things. Number one, designate India as a country of particular concern, something that the Lantos Human Rights Commission, which is again bipartisan, Democrat and Republican, have been calling the State Department to do, and yet they have continued to put it off, and they're hold them accountable, whether it's a Republican or Democratic administration accountable, to hold India accountable as a country of particular concern. Second, to condemn Hindutva as we do any other form of ethno-national, the weaponizing of religion through nationalism. And then to educate our churches on the rise of Hindutva alongside other forms of ethnic nationalism. So, go ahead.
Hindutva.
Yeah.
And last thing I would say, very briefly, is that the church has a voice, especially here in America, where we have pretty strong free speech. And it can use that voice for the Philippines. The UMC is leading the way, if this
will be the first
gets passed
church
tomorrow,
to do this,
with bringing this issue of persecution of Christians and other religious minorities to the forefront and expressing as a church polity its concern. And this is pressing, urgent for India. India is in the top 11 countries where it is ranked as the most dangerous country in the world in which to be a Christian. Christianity, under various laws, has basically been criminalized, is being criminalized in India. The U.S. government is not doing anything, but the U.S. church can
do something. Genocide Watch, on a scale of 1 to 9, just so we'll leave you with this. Genocide Watch, which is secular and independent, 1 to 9, places India as a 7. Okay? And so when I stand with a Pentecostal minister, a Catholic priest, a sister, we talk about this. We talk about what the impact will be for Christians. If it happens to Christians, it's going to happen to Muslims, Sikhs, lower caste Dalits, and indigenous people. So we stand together on this. There is a letter we invite you to sign as well. Fiacona has authored it. Alongside the New York State Council of Churches, going to Secretary of State Blinken. We have 6 bishops that have signed. I have 5 other bishops that have committed to signing it. We have the former chancellor for the Orthodox Church in America that has signed it already. And the president of the Wesley Theological Seminary signed it as well. We invite you to sign it. We're here if you have any questions. And thank you, Joy.